Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for listening to WXOX 97.1 FM in Louisville, Kentucky. This is Artist Talk with LVA, the show produced by Louisville Visual Art, and I'm Louisville Visual Art. I'm talking too fast. And my name is Keith Waits. I'm your host. I've got two women today who are members of the first cohort of the Curate Purchase Inspire curatorial program from Louisville Visual Art that is initiated by our friend Claire Hearn, who's been on the show many times, but I think this is the first for both of these guests. So let me tell you who they are. Shauntrice Martin is a mother, abolitionist, and artist. She was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, currently serves as a lobbyist. Her artwork has reflected a tumultuous yet triumphant trajectory. The use of acrylics, textile sculpture, and photography blend in her pieces to create sometimes haunting images of the lives Black and Indigenous people could have lived if white supremacy never existed. She created Chata Noir as a resource and outlet for artists to develop network in BE. In other words, if you want to go to our website, Chata Noir, I want to say CHAHTANOIR. Wonderful name, by the way. She's also the inaugural Speed Art Museum Artist in Residence. Her photo journey is available via Speed X West. Shauntrice's museum solo exhibition, Something in the Water, opened at the Speed Art Museum in December of 2021. And there's a ton of other things I could say about Shauntrice Martin, but we got to go on and introduce Ada Asenjo, who was born in the Dominican Republic, where flowers bloom all throughout the year. Pressing flowers is something she has enjoyed doing most of her life. Pressed foliage has been used to elaborately embellish gifts and items for ages. Each petal and leaf is intricate beyond comparison, yet they are often overlooked. By juxtaposing different elements, their exquisite details become apparent. Now, these two women had submitted to an open call for curatorial proposals, and they were two of four women chosen for this first cohort, which was supposed to be only two, but these four women had such powerful submissions, and I'm not really exaggerating that all four were accepted into this first round, and they all are on their own kind of schedule for realization. But the first one, Sweet Fire, which is at Play Cousins Collective, is Shauntrice's exhibit, and it is sort of almost in place. It's had some people looking at it, but it's going to have some public viewings later. She can tell us more about that. Ada's exhibit, Somos de aquí y afloramos, which she will say much better than I did, is going to have an opening November 5th. Her exhibit is at La Casita Center. And just before we get into it, I'll just say that the idea behind CPI, the request for proposals, was that a person would come up with an idea for an exhibit that could be placed inside a local nonprofit, thinking more particularly about health and wellness sort of nonprofits, not arts nonprofits. And so that's why these art exhibits are going into these locations where the art will sit for many years, hopefully, maybe a lifetime. And the art was all purchased. The budget for the program makes sure the art was all purchased from local artists at their asking price. That's the program. So let's get into this. Shauntrice, I know you have to leave us before, so we'll start with you. So talk to me a little bit about your exhibit, the idea of your exhibit, and what it's doing and why you purchased the art. Tell us everything about it.
Yeah, so first, I'm grateful that it was open because I did not plan to apply initially. I actually sent it out to other people, and they were all like, I don't know if I should apply. And I was like, I don't either, but I don't know if any of them are, so I did.
That's exactly what happened to me.
Right. And it, of course it worked out. So my favorite writer ever is Lorraine Hansberry, who has passed on, but her book Young, Gifted, and Black is like a posthumous autobiography. So it's like pieces of all the things she did. She is the playwright for Raisin in the Sun, which I saw the film before the play. And it was incredible. It was I mean, if you have never read her work or seen any of her work, it is absolutely beautiful. Like all the emotions you can have as a human, you will experience them through her work. And one of my other favorite writers is James Baldwin. So the two of them were really close, and he wrote a letter called Sweet Lorraine. He also wrote a book called The Fire Next Time. And so in thinking about what I wanted to do, I wanted to do like our West End version of that. So it's essentially, instead of being a love letter to another writer, mine is a love letter to the West End. So through these artists, I wanted to celebrate different parts of the West End. I know a lot of our art as Black artists can sometimes be very much focused on trauma, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, I wanted to put art in a space for children, which is why I worked with Play Cousins Collective, that they could grow up with and see themselves all the time. One of the first pieces of art I ever remember seeing is Ed Hamilton's sculpture, the boxing gloves, in honor of Muhammad Ali. Because part of my life, I grew up in Shepherd Square housing projects. So even though we were surrounded by poverty, like I could see that every single day. And when I learned it was not only a Black artist, but an artist who lived in Louisville, it blew my mind, because in school, they don't talk about Black artists. They don't talk about local arts. And so the sort of genesis of this was wanting to create that artistic space for other children the way I had it. Because I mean, if you know me, you know I'm a big fan of Ed Hamilton, and I really want to like shadow him. But
Who's not a fan of Ed Hamilton?
I was thinking the same.
Well, and I kind of fangirl. So it's like when you see somebody famous, like he is very sweet and approachable and all that, but I always get jittery, like, oh no, I got to get better at my art before I approach him. But I really wanted to create that space. And that was the exciting part about applying. It's like, I can at least put the idea out there that some other kids who were like me can just see this growing up from different types of art. And I'm just really thrilled because the students who will see the show every day also have art in the show, which is dope. I hope that wasn't too long.
No. Well, that's the thing. I think all of these ideas are, you can talk for a long time. You can talk for hours. Yeah. And that Ed Hamilton didn't leave Louisville when he started to become a big deal is a real gift to the city. Yeah. That he has stayed here and been present and everything that he is. But just for that side note. But I'll say, I mean, as you talk about it, I'm reminded of that. I was part of the group that was reading these submissions and trying to make this decision. And one of the things to emphasize is that I think I told all you guys when we were doing interviews with you, the final four, was we weren't sure what we were doing. This is a new program. It's a new idea. And what we found was so interesting was that these four submissions actually really taught us something about, yes, this is what this should be. So when you talk about the art, having that relationship to kids in that place, that nonprofit, Play Cousins Collective, that's exactly what we were kind of thinking about, but I don't even know if we had really articulated it in the way that you did. And I think the four of you did in your final submission. So talk a little bit about some of the art you chose.
Yeah. So one of the pieces that I chose, I had actually met this artist at Melwood. I was supposed to meet someone else. They stood me up and I was lost. Melwood is kind of like this huge like square, and I'm not good with like spatial awareness, and like I just get lost.
A maze.
It's a labyrinth. Yes.
Yes, it is. And like I tried to exit at one point, went out the wrong door, didn't see my car or the parking lot my car was in. So like I came back in, and Tamisha Lovely Allen is the person I saw. And I was just like, I guess I looked lost and looked confused, because she had this calming energy that was kind of like, hey, you need some help. And I ended up in her studio for like an hour. So if that person hadn't stood me up, like, thank you, a person who will not be named, but like we had a really deep, dope conversation. And at that point in my art career, I don't think I had my speed show yet. I was just kind of like figuring out if this is something I want to do, because I'd been in nonprofits for so long that had nothing to do with art. And she was creating this piece at the time that I ended up being able to purchase. It was a big win. And the figure that you see is this Black man who is like looking off. He looks so regal, has this like large mud cloth coat on. Mud cloth is one of my favorite fabrics, and I love symbols. And so it was just like, I looked at it and I was like, wow, I will never be able to afford that.
That is a beautiful, beautiful piece.
It
It
is.
is.
And at the time, I didn't know. I think it's oil. Like I was looking at it like that could be oil. It looks so vibrant, and I'm trying to like sound really smart and knowledgeable to this artist who is clearly a professional and so talented. And then after I was like, actually, she just seems like she's talented, yes, but she just seems like a regular person, super down to earth. She taught me so much. So that piece, Regal, is, I mean, it was the start of selecting the other pieces because I knew it had to be something that would make people stop and really look. And for months and months after that, I would always repost when she posted about that piece because I was just like, somebody needs to pay this money. Like, it is incredible. And she took her time to really make it stunning. And the model for the piece actually came to see the piece in the space. So it was just like, everything came together so beautifully. It's like LVA was like in the mix right on time.
Well, I just interviewed Tamisha. It was just, we just aired it last week because she's doing Open Studio Louisville. And so I was focusing on Open Studio artists. And she talks about that piece, and she talks about how she had never done a piece on that scale and she wanted to work at that scale. And so it's interesting because that piece also is a sort of a milestone, maybe that's too big a word, but you know, it's a marker in her career and her development as an artist. And it is a stunning piece. I've seen it too. Yeah. So now one of the things that's interesting to me, and maybe this is sort of a little bit of a segue into Ada, is that I think for the two of you, and it sort of just fell by the way you guys are finishing your projects, that I would interview you together. By the way, the other two curators, Bianca Vaughn and Minda Honey, we'll have them on later. Their projects are going to kind of reach fruition, I think, in 23, like after the year has changed. So, but it's interesting to me that the two of you have come around at the same time and I'm talking together because I feel like both of you are very, very your concentration is very, very much on representation and artists being able to communicate something within to the other members of that community. For you, Black local artists communicating something to other members of the Black community, particularly kids in this Play Cousins collective. But Ada is doing something similar, or am I wrong, Ada? Am I out there?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I have seen some of these people's talents, and I thought that they have to be seen further. You know, it has to go further than just our little spaces. So I'm hoping that you know, they go out, and many of them are very appreciative to have been chosen. I mean, I'm like, I'm just picking you out and showing an example of everything that is out there. There's more, but these are just a few of the gems that.
For La Casita, you specifically are choosing Latinx artists.
Yes, these are Latinx artists because we are very different. You may have heard that all Latinx people are not the same, you know, so we're not a big blob of homogenous, and we think alike. We're from very different countries. I mean, there is a common language because we were colonized by Spain, so it is Spanish speaking, but every culture has their own vibe. And then having lived part of the time in this country, part of the time in the Dominican Republic, where I'm from, I feel like we have to navigate a lot of other different cultural differences and accept and adapt. And accept and adapt, or, you know, kind of fit in. There's you know, how sometimes your underwear's on too tight. Sometimes it's that feeling, and you have to wiggle around. It's kind of like that sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that metaphor.
Well, but you know what? I think everybody will get that metaphor. They'll all know exactly what you're talking about. Well, you know, it's interesting. I once in a past professional situation worked a lot with students who were coming from other countries to study at a university in the United States, and I found that a lot of the kids that came from um, uh, Pacific Rim countries would pick an Anglo name, you know, and I thought that was so curious. And they all did it by choice. Nobody forced them to.
Right.
And I asked somebody who was who'd worked for me a while and who had a Chinese father, and I said, so why is that? Like, I'm interested in learning their names. I'm interested, and I feel like even though that's their choice and I'm not imposing it on them, I felt like it was so curious, that way of assimilating. And she said they just find it's easier. They just don't want to deal with the nonsense that comes, the way people will deliberately mispronounce their names and pretend they can't figure it out and all this kind of stuff. And if they just say Eric,
Exactly. Yeah. So we, if you're from somewhere else, you kind of have to figure out how much you change or adapt in order to be okay, you know.
mm-hmm.
And it doesn't stay either. It shifts all the time. So that's how it is. It's like jumping from an ice flow to an ice flow. Boom, boom, boom. I remember a story of this someone going to freedom, crossing the river, and there was little ice pockets, and that's how she got free to cross to the other side, was jumping on rope. And that's sometimes how you feel. You're just jumping from one thing to the other to get to where you want to go. And that's the path. Chum, chum, chum.
Interesting.
I hope that makes sense.
Well, I think you could probably broaden that metaphor to a universal human experience, but I wonder if, you know, is like, you know, speaking as a white guy of a certain age, like I'm not aware of jumping, right? Or maybe my jumps aren't as big, but and then the jumps you guys make maybe are bigger. I mean, I don't know. I'm probably struggling with that metaphor a little bit, but like, so let me. So before we lose Shauntrice, I want to ask you before we focus in more on Ada's work, before you leave us. When you guys got started, one of the things you did that was so interesting was you organized a salon. This is an LVA project, but it was interesting to see how you guys took on your own projects and the challenges, and they're different for each one of you. But that salon was such a terrific idea, and it was yours, not ours. We can't take any credit. We helped it happen. But it sort of positioned the four of you as sort of a, if not a team, I don't know if a team is the right word, because you each had your own, but it sort of put you together in a certain kind of space and gave you a profile as a joint profile rather than just an individual profile.
Right.
It was brilliant, and I so appreciate it.
You know, it was a great idea. And it was fun. I think a lot of the artists just enjoyed getting in a room together, just like a bunch of artists getting in a room together to talk about their work for whatever reason. It was like tremendous fun. But
well, and we learned a lot. I mean, a lot of it was intentional. Like I wanted to do it with these three women who I felt like we're a cohort. I mean, I guess you can call it a team, even though we have the separate projects, because there are often times when I just see like an opportunity, or Bianca might see some post that she thinks would help me, you know what I mean? Or like, it's just, I feel like we're learning a lot from each other. Even the person I hired to install, I then introduced her to the other curators, because I'm like, I didn't even think about installation before I met this woman who installed a show I was in New Albany. It's Julie Leitner, in case you're listening, shout out. Hire Julie Leitner, she's amazing. So it's like, I just feel like we're able to like air grievances about the art world to each other, but then also help each other. Like it's been really good to have other people to talk through, whereas I've had fellowships where I just felt alone and I was like so confused, and like I didn't want to be like seen as dumb or too much of a novice. And the brilliant thing about this group is that I do have a cohort where I can be like, well, does this sound right to y'all? Because here's what happened. Or, you know, I'm thinking about this. What do y'all think? And it's all been positive, even when it's like we might not agree on whatever style. Like I am going to consider all three of them friends. I don't know if they consider me a friend, but you know, so it's been beautiful for me in this process. And even though, you know, I've had like the first showing, and even after all the shows are finished, these are ladies that I'm going to be reaching out to, and I want to see them succeed as artists as well as curators. So that is a part I did not expect. And And I'm just I mean, like you said, the salon was something that I feel like helped us all figure out what we want to do and how to solidify what our projects were, as well as figure out like some logistics. Like there were definitely some artists who like never followed up with me. And I was like, oh, on the curator side, this is, you know, how do I find someone who's amazing, but will also turn in the paperwork and will also like finish the work when they said they would. You know, nothing against my fellow artists, but I just without them, I don't think I would have had the same show if it was just like a one person at a time fellowship. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think it could have been possible, because some of the stuff I ended up putting in the show was because of conversations we had or artists that maybe they were interested in. So I've researched a lot more artists than I ever have in my life, which as an artist myself, I was kind of selfish. I just looked at the people who do the stuff I do and not even that much of them. So Ada, especially, like, her style is not one I have ever explored or thought about. And then meeting her introduced me to an entire new world of art that I hadn't even considered. So that's been, to me, aside from being able to invest $30,000 into local artists, has been the best part, is having that connection with people who are unlike me as far as their art goes, but are like me in the fact that they want artists to thrive.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, and I'll make the point here too, just because people don't know exactly everything about this program, is that while all four of you are highly intelligent, very accomplished women, you are not capital C curators. You don't have a master's degree in curatorial studies, but you're all creatives who, and really that was another one of the lessons about it. And anybody who is a curator who is paid by somebody to curate, in other words, you have the opportunity to fill walls with art. We didn't want those people. We wanted people that were kind of new to it and would come. It's that fresh perspective on everything that I think was really valuable. So Ada, let's get back to your piece a little, your exhibit a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about how, you know, Shauntrice was talking about how there was that immediate circle of people, artists that she knew or that worked like her. I'm guessing maybe you had that, and what did you do to expand your understanding, and who did you reach out to?
Well, I think I started from the end of La Casita, because I've had a relationship with them, and I know people who are artists through them. And so that you know, that put me in a position to start expanding. And then this fantastic salon came along and found different people that maybe didn't fit, because even though I'm not a person that believes in exclusivity, this is for Latinx artists, so I had to narrow it down. But through the people at this salon, I found about other artists that they recommended. So the circle kept widening. So, you know, there was the salon, and then there was these other artists, wonderful. And that's where I met Tamisha Lovely Allen, who is lovely. And like that, it kept going. The circles keep widening. And yes, Shauntrice's idea with the salon was, I thought, brilliant. And she is a force to be reckoned with. She's got all this energy. It's like, dang.
Yeah, well,
yeah, so,
Shauntrice's introduction only touches on things that she's done. The Black Grocery, the Black Market was one of her projects that she developed and turned over. So many things. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your space too, because you have a particular challenge in the space that you were trying to place art in. You know, none of these spaces are necessarily made to be showcasing art. But talk about how did it affect the decisions you made about in your choices, for example?
Well, so this is a formerly, it was formerly a Catholic school gymnasium. Prior to that, it had been a theater. So that's why there is a stage. And that's why there are basketball hoops and and the score board and all of that. It's been painted in a style to sort of reflect walking down a Caribbean street, so it has these pastel bright colors. And none of this is ideal for an exhibit, but I'm imagining, okay, so we are all different, you know, there's all these different colors, we're all different. And we're in this structure that is sort of what it is, and we're adapting to it. So it has some symbolism. I retrofitted symbolism maybe, but that's how I'm seeing it. I you know, went through the idea of let's paint it, let's do this, but in the end I decided, no, we're gonna keep it just like that, and we're gonna just put these people, and it's coming up pretty soon, so I have in my head how I want to place these, and it is working out. I don't know how, but it seems to be working out. The colors there work out with the pieces I have. It's a miracle. Yes.
Do you feel like you so when you were choosing pieces and you knew this was the space, do you think your instincts were working for you, were working well?
I think it had to be instincts, yeah, or a divine something, yeah, divine intervention.
Whatever.
And it's not just 2D, it is also some garments, 2 dresses and 2 jackets by different artists, and also some amazing masks by a young Latinx artist. So it's going to be a little bit of everything.
I mean, you can say the names of the artists if you wish. I don't mean
Okay.
to put you on the spot, but I almost feel like you're avoiding saying the names.
No, I'm sorry. No, okay, so Mandy Mudd and Alma Martinez have this what do I call it? It's not really a company, but they have created these dresses, these garments. They're calling them Cielito Lindo, which is referring to a Mexican song, and it's beautiful silk with traditional elements on it. And Marcos has these 2 jackets that are very in Marcos Morales, sorry. Very urban, but very what's the word? Culturally embedded. He's imbuing them with his culture.
Okay.
By stitching, he stitches. And Edwin, who's the other non-3D artist, Edwin Ramirez, he does these incredible masks. And he's been around town. He's had exhibits in different places, different galleries. So he will be recognized, I think.
Right. He showed with Sabre Crockett at Core Gallery several
yes.
years ago. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, a wonderful artist.
He was on the show.
And
I did an interview with them.
Oh, cool. Okay, so you know who I'm talking about. Yeah. I don't know if you want to hear about the other artists. The other artists have more, 2D frame things, but do you have time for that or no?
Well, no, I mean, I'm just like, it's fine to talk about the artists. The thing, whenever you start talking about a list of people, though, if you name a couple of people, then everybody else will know, because why didn't you mention me? You didn't mention me. But then you also, it's always that thing, like, are you going to remember everybody you're working with? And no, I just, to get to the idea of like why you're choosing the artist you're choosing. So, and also I know from talking to you about the project and working with it a little bit, that there was some feeling, if I'm correct, that some of those artists felt, maybe especially compelled, like they were really excited to be doing this for La Casita Center.
Yes. Many of these artists have had a relationship with La Casita Center, and a few of them have never presented anything and have never had exhibits. So they're really excited to be in this exhibit. Yeah.
Well, and this kind of speaks to, and I think Shauntrice, she's had to leave, but I think she might be able to come back to us in a little bit, that one of the things that really stood out, I think, to the jury, looking at all of these submissions, is that the strongest submissions seemed to be people, and all four of these people, you and Shauntrice and Bianca and Minda, all had strong relationships with the nonprofit in which you wanted to place the art. Those relationships already existed. And I mean, could you imagine that you would do this anywhere else, for example?
The thing with this particular, afloramos means to flourish. We are here, we're from here, and we flourish. So we had, I had helped organize Aflora a few years ago, pre-pandemic, and it was a wonderful event. Nothing like this exhibit is going to be, but it was a wonderful kind of organic gathering, and we wanted to do it again. Karina Barillas, the director, we tried it, but then the pandemic came, and so I had also told everybody else in the world, apply for this grant. It's fantastic, apply for it. And nobody said anything. So finally I said, dang it, I'm gonna have to do it.
Well, I think, to be fair, it was hard to, I think, maybe get a grasp on what the submissions were supposed to be. And which again, sort of, I don't mean to just, shine on you guys so much, but that to me, it emphasizes how powerful the top four submissions were. Because if so many people had a hard time having an understanding about what we were asking them to try to do, the fact that you four did it so well is even more of an accomplishment. And like, as I said before, we were struggling with what we thought of winning submissions. You guys taught us that. Shauntrice is back with us now. Shauntrice, we were talking about the relationship to the nonprofit. Again, going back to the point of that the four strongest submissions were all individuals that had strong relationships to the nonprofit they wanted to place the art in.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about, so did you immediately know it was Play Cousins Collective? Did you think about other options, or did you immediately know, no, this is where I'm going to do it?
So I always knew I wanted Play Cousins involved, and I wasn't sure because initially it was going to be a different physical space, and so we went through some trials and tribulations with which location, but I always knew I wanted them involved because one thing, as a mother who's an artist, I always need childcare. Right. So I can't necessarily go to certain events or participate in fellowships. Even I got offered studio time, but you have to be 18 and over to go to that space. And I was like, this is a great value, a free studio space for a month, but I can't do that because there will be days when I need my kid to be with me. And he was being homeschooled back then too. So I always knew I wanted them involved, and it was between them and one other organization. But when I mentioned it to Play Cousins, Kristen, who is the executive director, lit up, and we actually had all these other ideas. I was already teaching art with them, so it just made the most sense. And I knew that for years to come, generations to come, they would appreciate it. When my son is old enough to volunteer at Play Cousins, there will still be kids appreciating it and creating art. And I think when I talked to you and Claire the first time, I talked about really wanting a sculpture, but not knowing how to install it or what to do. And so in talking with the students through art class, and after I announced this fellowship, it was one of the parents mentioned repurposing things. She's actually one of the artists in the show too, Ashley Phillips, just about the importance for the environment, for repurposing instead of just buying brand new things or building things to last so you don't have to keep replacing them. And then I was like, wait a minute, why don't I just do that for the sculpture? Get a piece of furniture. Originally, it was going to be a bookshelf or something. And I kind of, mentioned it to the kids and the new art teacher who was there after I left. And they came up with this idea of making a quilt essentially, but with furniture. So yeah, that was exciting. So I didn't always know it was Play Cousins necessarily, but I knew that they were going to be involved if this was going to be as accessible as possible.
Well, and it's interesting you talk about the throne, and you talked earlier about Tamisha's piece, which is called Regal.
Yeah.
And so talk tell me a little bit more about the conversation you think that art is having with those kids, more specifically.
So one thing I want is for each student to find something they're attached to, because there are a couple art pieces in the show that I wouldn't necessarily pick if it was like my house or for my own space. I was picking it with the idea of like, who were all the kids I knew growing up and what sort of thing would inspire them? What sort of art would make them be like, okay, maybe I can be an artist too. So one thing that's not necessarily art, but that is included is a chalkboard wall for the kids to essentially add their own sort of flair. It's a little bit further away from the priceless art that's on the wall, so they don't just knock everything down. But Charisma Lusko of Queen Painters like had this really great idea with the chalkboard paint, and we just extended that idea. And it just, the conversation that the pieces are having is that everyone is accepted. So there's different types of art. John Cherry has his photography on aluminum. You have Tamisha and Sandra's paintings that are traditional painted. Two of the kids' paintings are both mixed media. So you have all these forms of art. Like there's diversity in the forms of art, the sizes of the pieces, the shape, size, color, all those sorts of things. And with the throne, I think it even adds another dimension to it. So the conversation I feel like the pieces are having are like an ongoing timeline of Black art, local Black art. My son is also here with a banana. Say hi.
Hi. How you doing?
What's his name?
Anija. This is actually one of the artists who helped.
I loved your piece.
Sorry, I got him to call me.
Oh,
Okay. Go answer your phone in the kitchen. His name is Anija. So there in total, there are so many kids involved. There's over 15, I can't remember the exact number of youth who have contributed. And then each year, the new class of students who come in to play cousins will add their piece of fabric, just like an ongoing, like perpetual quilt. I want it to be like a living conversation between the pieces of art. And I'm thrilled about that part the most, because I have no idea, what each artist cared about. I just know that it's going to be something that they have created. They don't have a direction like you have to do this. Whereas with the adult artists, I said, hey, I'm looking for something that's kind of like this. This is what I have in my head. Do you have something that fits that? And with the kids, it was like, hey, you're going to make art. Here's some fabric and some materials and stuff. Make something so that I can include it in this proposal.
Well, so let me ask you, Ada, let's switch back to you here for a second. So you guys, the four of you did these amazing submissions, these amazing proposals. So it's not going to be long before we put this call out for the next cohort in 2023. So for all those people that were confused or didn't understand what this was, Ada, what would you say? And I'm going to ask you this too, Shauntrice, but let's start with Ada. Ada, what's the advice you would give to people who are planning on trying to put in a submission next time?
okay. Let's see. I'm on the spot. Find an organization that you love and an issue with that organization or the meaning and the relationships there, and write from there, from the heart. That's basically how I did it. La Casita is an amazing organization. They serve, it's a resource center for everybody, but mostly Latinx people who are in need. A lot of families, single parent families, single moms. And so they are doing things that are very difficult, and their staff does it with grace and love. And so if you're an artist, partner with an organization that you have an affiliation, and that's how I would start. And then find a broader theme that you want to bring out. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, is that clear?
I just want to echo everything Ada said, because there is absolutely success in picking an organization that you love. And I would say, like I tell a lot of artists, apply for stuff. It doesn't matter if you're underqualified or you haven't done the thing or you know, are not sure, just apply, because at worst they're just going to turn you down, and then
Yes,
apply.
yes.
And sometimes people even give you feedback, which is super valuable. And then, like, for instance, like, none of us were professional curators. I mean, that's not what y'all were looking for, but I know for some people that kind of deterred them from applying. But like, what I do is I look at my favorite living artist, with Sanford Biggers. I look at his CV, and I have tried to make my career go down that line. Oh, he was in this fellowship, I'm going to apply. He was doing this at this year, at this age in his career, I'm going to do that stuff. I got to meet him, and I really fangirled, and I was so entertained. But like, you know, of course, I'm not ashamed to say I'm not on the level of Sanford Biggers. Like, I'm not getting commissioned for a bunch of money and get flown out. But yeah, thank you. Yes. But a lot of people think you have to be Sanford Biggers 2022 level in order to even apply for these things. But here's the thing, when you're an unknown artist and you apply and you get denied, they're not going to remember anyway. You're unknown. So you might as well do it. That's my biggest thing. Is the other thing is that an artist helped make this happen. And I don't think people pay attention sometimes to who is, like, not just the donor, but who, like, came up with this, because y'all had a lot of really good information on the reasoning. You know what I mean? And I saw Claire's name, and I had met Claire early on in the pandemic, and she talked a lot about murals and her connection to community. So like, that definitely made me feel like, okay, this is probably something I can do, because an artist is involved. So more than likely they kind of understand some of the, you know, insecurities I might feel as someone trying to get funding. So that, for me, because this is my first interaction with LVA, besides just like going to events. So that really made me feel like this is something I can accomplish potentially. And again, if I don't get it, they're not going to announce all the people who didn't get it.
Who has not been denied something?
Yeah.
Never been denied anything, right?
I've talked to some artists who kind of feel like they haven't ever been, but you know, it's an important point, and I get really disheartened and disappointed when I see artists apply for things and then they don't come back and apply again, and it's self-defeating, and it's their choice. Everybody that succeeds in getting these kinds of opportunities, or the Fisher Award, or Great Meadows, or all these different opportunities, there's national opportunities. They didn't just do it and got it. They did 100 and got one. You know, that's the way it works. And the thing is the more you do it, the better you get at it. The more you learn to articulate your own vision. You know, and I think a lot of visual artists, you know, maybe they are also very, very good about writing, but normally the cliche, and there's truth to it, is you're very good at visualization and you're not as good at expressing that in language. That's one reason why you are being an artist. But of course, that's not how the world works. It's not always that fair. You've got to be able to write and communicate those ways. But it's been we're coming close here to being out of time, and actually I know the question, and when you were talking, Shauntrice, and I kind of lost track of it a little bit, but but I really appreciate all you guys, both you guys, talking about all of this, and again, it was a real eye-opening experience to see these applications and to be taught something from them. And I don't know that that's always what can be said from inside of an organization. And I'll often think, you know, it's interesting. I listen to you talk to makes me think about something. You know, it's like there's a phrase, gatekeeping, in the arts community and all sorts of creative things. And you know, I think gatekeeping is not in and of itself an evil thing if what you do as a gatekeeper is to open the gates wider. And I think, you know, like when you make the decisions you make, listen to you guys talk about your decisions, you know, it's like gatekeeping with wisdom. It's the right kind of gatekeeping is making choices and decisions that serve the broadest part of the broadest range of the community. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I often think that it's one of those things like the gatekeeping as a word has been so demonized, and it's one of those words that I think we need to turn around, not turn around and deny the problem that's always been there, but to realize that the secret is just to keep opening the gates wider and wider and wider.
Maybe it should be gate openers.
Gate
instead of
openers.
Gatekeepers.
But gatekeepers,
Right.
like, what's the password? You can't come in unless you have the password.
Mm.
See,
Yep.
we didn't know what the passwords were. You taught us the passwords. And the password is commitment, relationship, and commitment to your own vision and your community.
Mhm.
That's what I think we saw.
And I know, I don't know if this sounds some kind of way because I got the fellowship, but I will say that the interview itself, I felt more comfortable, like meeting with you and Claire, like it didn't feel like an inquisition or like, you know, I was being interrogated. It felt like a real conversation. Like y'all actually went back and thought about it. And then even like the process, especially with you, Keith, you're probably like as a cohort, probably one of our favorite people in the arts now. Because even like it was very honest and straightforward. Like here, like we have a question. Okay, here's what I think the answer is, but I'll also check and make sure. Like it was good to know that like if I'm confused or lost or whatever, and you know my folks in the cohort, we don't know the answer. Like I can reach out to you, and Claire is very approachable to say like these are the things that I think I'm doing right and I'm doing wrong, and like what do you think? Like having that feedback, so I'm not just screaming into the void. I know we all have talked about how great you've been, but it makes a difference because that's not always the case for artists.
You know, I'm going to have to edit this out now.
After
This
No,
is not
but
a paid promotion.
yeah.
No,
A
but I
lot of-
appreciate you saying that because I'll tell you, I'll be honest, and I'm the interview's for you guys, not for me. But you know, I curate, and I've struggled with accepting that term because I didn't study it, I didn't get a degree in it. It's just something that I started doing in my job. You know, I was doing a lot less at LVA when I started back there again in 2016, and you know, but it's but I'm a curator, but I don't have all that academic expertise. I don't have all that academic vernacular. So to me, it felt very familiar to talk to you guys. I'm like, yeah, I've kind of been on this journey too, you know, and I'm just a few steps ahead of you just from years, but not from necessarily experience. I mean, it's a real, to me, it's just a lot of fun to work and talk to you guys. I don't know. So I appreciate you saying that, but it was fun.
And I know I keep doing shout outs and we gotta go, but like even Christian and Desmond and Kayla like actually coming to the events, promoting the events. Not all organizations do that. You're kind of just on your own and they get credit for diversity. But I really did appreciate like Desmond would send me opportunities sometimes that had nothing to do with this, but that was about the arts. So, you know, just overall, you know, whatever ups and downs, I think overall the experience beneficial and I would not trade it.
Well, I'm glad. The worst thing about the four of you is that it's going to make the standards moving forward very high. Like, you know, what's it going to be like to submit and go through the experience? And we're going to be like, oh man, they weren't as good as those guys. I shouldn't say that, but that's kind of my attitude towards it too. And I haven't spent hardly any time with Mindy yet. We got to get down, you know, and she's a whole nother force of nature. But before we go, I just want to say, we mentioned her name, but I just want to say, just to be clear about, I don't know that I said it at the front, Claire Hearn is a wonderful local artist. She's been on the show a few times, and it is, you know, you like to think like, if you suddenly came into a bunch of money, would you buy an island? Would you buy a jet plane? Would you buy, you know, what are all these things you would do? And it's nice to see that what an artist would do. And I think you guys, you know, I think a lot of artists would, it was to find a way to put that money back into the arts community, supporting artists and supporting creatives who want to do something like this. But, you know, there's no structure for it. You'd have to just go out there and build it from the ground and hope that somebody would get behind you, you know? So it's Claire Hearn. She nurtured this idea for like 10 years. Not knowing if she would ever be able to make it happen, and then finally had the financial resource to put up and fund it and ask LVA to be a partner in it. So, you know, yes, it all starts with Claire.
Thank you.
So you guys, we are out of time. We've got to stop. And but this has been a lot of fun. And you know, well, I'm sure there'll be other reasons to have you on the show for other projects. You know, it's like you guys are going to do other exciting things. So, but thank you for joining me today, Shauntrice Martin and Ada Asenjo.
I have to plug November 5th at La Casita Center,
November
Right.
5th at La Casita Center. And is it at 5:30?
6:30.
6:30.
8:30.
6:30.
Yes, it's gonna be a fiesta. There's gonna be it's gonna be a Day of the Dead, kind of a very brief touching on that, and then we party.
Who doesn't love Day of the Dead? I mean, come on. Everybody's into that. All right. Well, thank you both for being here.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Keith.